in general, like sort of during focus, but generally. Thank you all for being here. So as Daniel said, my name is William George. I'm a mathematician. I previously worked in academia, and now I work for for Klaus, or I work on doing research for Klaus, which is a blockchain-based, Ethereum-based for now, dispute resolution platform, which a priori doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with oracles, but you'll see there's a bit of a connection in a bit. So first of all, just like what is an oracle, roughly. I'm not sure we have consensus over any given definition, but basically it's this mechanism that like brings information that natively lives off-chain onto the blockchain. So like the blockchain consensus protocols typically have these block producers or miners that are verifying things like signatures and calculations and that like transactions were double spent, but they're not verifying things like who won an election or whether it rained in Paris, or even what the price of Ether is in US dollars at any given time. But all of this could be really important to have contracts that you would want to use on your blockchain platform. If you want to have some kind of betting platform where you bet on the outcome of elections, you need to know the outcome of the election. If you want to have some kind of like flood insurance, then you want to know whether it rained in Paris. And a lot of financial contracts would want to know the price of Ether in US dollars. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about like oracles that produce real number values. So specifically this kind of like price oracle, like what's the price of ETH in US dollars, but like also like maybe for your rain contract in Paris, you want to know how much it rained and whether it hit over a threshold or not. So we're going to see that I can produce real number valued oracles. Anyway, this is information you want to know. So what exists currently? So currently there's sort of two flavors of oracle, and then there's kind of a mix between the two. So there are oracles that basically allow on-chain verification of an off-chain authority. So we trust someone, or maybe the average of someone's, to give you information, then you bring that information on-chain. Alternatively, there's sort of crypto-economic oracles, where the idea is that we're going to have a bunch of participants, and they're going to play a game. And that game is hopefully going to be set up in such a way that somehow in the course of that game, it'll be in people's interest to act in such a way that the game will produce like a good result for the oracle. And then again, you can sort of mix these together, where you can like maybe you have untrusted authorities, but maybe they're competing against each other somehow, and that's kind of the hybrid approach. Okay, so for this sort of like off-chain authority in the kind of TLS notary or town crier mode, one particular thing that people have done is they've realized, if I want to know the result of a sporting event, like me as a human being, what I would do would be go to like ESPN.com and check the result of the sporting event. If I want to know the election result, I would go to the New York Times website. So if you're going to have like an off-chain authority that is going to give me information that I'm going to like pull onto the blockchain, like what would that mean abstractly? Well, they're going to have like some kind of public-private key, they're going to sign the information, and then the blockchain is going to check that. But what you realize is that like these websites that publish the information, they already have a public-private key. They have the certificate of the website. And like anything that's posted on the website, the website's configured well, is basically already signed by that key. So something like a sporting event result is published on ESPN.com, that is kind of a signed message saying like this person won the sporting event. And then these kind of verification of off-chain authority oracles work on configuring this information and formatting it in such a way that you can take that and you can check it efficiently on-chain. So I'm going to focus more on the other kind, the crypto-economic oracle. So here again, you have some kind of game, people are playing a game, hopefully that should produce like a good outcome. And often, not always, but often these games are based on the concept of Schelling points. So for those of you who don't know, Schelling points were developed by the economist Thomas Schelling in the 1970s. He won a Nobel Prize in economics. And a Schelling point is a solution that people will tend to use in the absence of communication because it seems natural, special, or relevant to them. That seems kind of abstract. What this means for us would be, imagine that I have a bunch of people, and they're going to tell me who won the election. There were two candidates, Alice and Bob, and people are being asked. They're going to vote who won. And they're told that if they vote with the majority, if they vote for whoever ultimately gets more votes, they'll get a reward. And if they vote for the person who got fewer votes between them, they'll get penalized. Then each person can go to the New York Times website or whoever and see, okay, yeah, Alice won the election. And then they're like, okay, what should I vote for so that I get a reward and not penalized? Well, I'm not necessarily communicating with these other people. I don't know how they're going to vote. But like, given the choice between the winner and not the winner seems like kind of a special or relevant choice. So I kind of expect the other person to think that I'm going to vote for the winner. And even if they're not honest, they'll expect me to vote for the winner, so they'll want to vote with me, so I want to vote with them. So they get in this game of like, I want to vote, they're going to think I'm going to want to do what they think they're going to do, and then it is that everybody gravitates towards the winner. A related concept is that the rewards and the penalties may be some kind of token that, like, whose value may go up and down based on whether the oracle is seen as being useful or not. And you might be thinking in the back of your mind, well, if I vote for Bob and Bob wins, token might crash. So these sort of two phenomena together are usually the backbone of these kind of shelling point cryptoeconomic oracles. And then ideally to convince people to all vote for us, the true way. And you can get into, you can argue and analyze like what kinds of situations are better suited towards having shelling point oracles or not. And one point that I think is valuable to make is that you probably only want to use in situations where you expect the winning choice to solidly get more than 50% of the vote. Like, if not, so imagine that I have these four choices, A, B, C, and D, and this dude in the middle is like, well, if I took like a poll of like the voters, even before this kind of like incentivization, I get a reward if I'm coherent kind of thing, what would they think? What would they think the honest answer would be? And nobody has a majority, maybe A has 40%, the other ones have less. How would I so if I think everybody has this sort of background prior for how people would vote in a vacuum, how are they going to, how are the other voters going to vote so I know how I should vote to try to be coherent with them? And you're like, well, A, they might vote for A because he has a plurality. People might, sort of seem like that's the kind of mainstream choices that might drift towards that. Or maybe B seems like a reasonable compromise. Maybe I should vote for B because I think they're going to go for the reasonable compromise. And then you sort of get into this like multi-level like shelling point inception game where you're trying to think through like what the strategies of the other people are going to be, and depending on how many levels deep you think, like the what strategy you think they're going to adopt, like the answer that you should vote for changes. So this can kind of become a mess relative to if you have like an answer that seemed relatively clear that would be getting more than 50%. And notice that if you only have two choices, one of them will always get more than 50%. So you don't really have this problem. So I would argue that binary oracles are sort of safer. Binary shelling point oracles are safer in this respect. And in Claros, so Claros, as I said, is a blockchain dispute resolution platform. What does that have to do with oracles? Well, sort of our like typical case is we imagine like Alice and Bob in a business relationship. Alice is a small business, Bob is a freelancer. They have a dispute over whether or not Bob did his job. Like Alice might want her money back, whatever. And then what they did is they put money in escrow, they put the payment in escrow, and they have some group of people that's going to vote on who was right and whether Alice should get a refund or not. And that sounds like an oracle. It's a specific kind of oracle, these like resolving disputes. But still, you're bringing in off-chain information. And the kinds of like crowdsourced people voting on that look very similar to the thing I had a couple slides ago. And for the moment, mostly, Claros has pretty much binary choices. So you might not be able to read there, but like here's a screenshot of a Claros case, and then there's two choices here. It's like, yes, Alice wins, add this token, whatever, or no. So strictly speaking, we always have this third choice that says I refuse to rule on this, and that choice is given to people in case that the case they might be ruling on is like involved in illegal activity or something. So like theoretically, there's a third choice. But it's mostly binary because I'm not going to rule on this. I think this might be illegal. It's pretty marketable. It's not going to happen very much. So similarly, Augur, and so this, what I'm going to talk to you about real oracles, real value oracles, is envisioned as an extension to Claros. So Claros, currently we have this kind of mostly binary perspective, and maybe we want to handle numbers, like maybe we want to handle results that have real number values. Alice gets a partial refund. You decide to give her 65% back. Maybe I want to leverage the fact that Claros is pulling in information about the real world to build like some kind of external price oracle. I can ask jurors stuff about, I can ask Claros voters stuff about like what the price of an asset is, and I can leverage this fact that I have this existing sort of justice oracle towards other applications. So that's kind of the origin of this oracle I'm going to describe, but what I will describe will be more general and can be used in other things. So another kind of existing cryptoeconomic oracle is Augur, the prediction market platform. So if you're not familiar, the idea of Augur is that people will basically bet money on events that are going to happen in the future, who's going to win the election, who's going to win the sporting event, and then after that event happens, somehow the blockchain has to figure out who won. Then that's where the oracle comes in. It has a pretty similar mechanism to how Claros works, and this kinds of like cryptoeconomically incentivized games. So currently here, when you ask an Augur question, you can ask for a binary yes or no question, and this is all set up in advance when you open the market. You can ask for a multiple choice, so many choices, and you can ask for something that has a numerical range. So that's this kind of like real number oracle that I'm going for. But notice theirs is pretty limited in terms of like, it's pretty rigid. You have to submit a minimum and a maximum value in advance. You have to put a precision in advance. If you ask something like, what's the price of ETH going to be on a given day in the future, the price of ETH may have like 10x or got cut in a tenth, and then your mint and your max may be all wrong, and your like precision may no longer be relevant. And then moreover, like Augur needs an oracle to determine the price of its own token rep in Ether at any given time. And like naturally this would be something they would use their own oracle for, and they decided not to do that because I guess they didn't think it was ready. And like instead they went with a collection of an average of trusted third parties. And in the next version, which is going to come out in a few months, as I understand, they're moving to an auction-based model. But that only sort of works because both Ether and rep live on the same chain. So if I come back to sort of this slide, but now in terms of like, I'm voting on real numbers and I had some fixed precision and I'm like, okay, one of the choices was one ETH is 164.63 and another one is 164.62. Like you're hopelessly in the situation where you don't really have a distinguished choice anymore. Like some may seem better than others, but like you can't necessarily expect any one of them to be like clear majority support. So like ideally be better than this. And one more kind of example of an existing oracle that in this sort of direction is Vitalik Buterin at one point on his blog, the founder of Ethereum, proposed an oracle exactly for this kind of Schelling point based price kind of situation that he called Schelling point. And here the idea people submit numbers, and then you take the median, and you reward people who are in the middle 25 to 75 percentile, and you punish people who are outside that. But he already noted in his blog that this is kind of subject to micro cheating, where like if I have some guess of how big the range is going to be between 25 and 30%, I can try to like edge toward the edge of that range, and maybe I don't change the result. The result ultimately is supposed to be the median. But if I can try to like nudge things by picking something on the low end of the range, that like, if other people join me, like we can kind of nudge the price down, and I won't necessarily be penalized for this kind of like semi-attacking behavior. So like this can be subject to drift by attacks where people are like not necessarily paralyzed for a sort of mildly malicious behavior. So hopefully we can create a price oracle that like works really well and isn't subject to these sort of like precision issues or drift attacks. So I'm going to do that, and it's going to be built out of binary oracles, because I said that we're pretty happy with the binary oracle. Claros ultimately, like, we believe that it works very well as a binary oracle. So we're going to build a real number oracle that uses an existing binary oracle. And the idea is like, if in our work, our binary oracle is a black box. It can be anything. It just has to return one of two values on chain after a certain amount of time for a given cost. It has a fee that you pay in. But the idea is that if you put in a cryptoeconomic binary oracle, you'll get out a cryptoeconomic real value oracle. So our binary oracle can have an appeal system, because Claros has an appeal system, and this is built around trying to like gain an extension of Claros. Here you just put in a bigger fee, and hopefully those additional resources should allow the binary oracle to make a better decision. For Claros, this means randomly drawing more people and asking a bigger pool of people. But the appeal system that we described is pretty general. In fact, if you look at Augur from the right perspective, it also kind of has an appeal system, like these successive dispute rounds. And what we describe is general enough to consider that as well. Okay, so our trust model is in our actors. So we have the actors that existed in whatever underlying binary oracle game. But because the binary oracle is a black box, we're not really talking about them. So like for Claros, we have these jurors. They're there, but in the background. And the real actors in this model, in our model, are respondents who are going to submit information. And the one sort of limitation in our work so far is they're not on average compensated. So these people are going to submit information. You're not really getting paid anything on average. Maybe individually, like some will win, some will lose, but it will average out to nothing, or even negative. But this isn't completely unreasonable because ultimately, like if you have an interest in the oracle producing a good result, if it's used in a financial contract and you're invested in that financial contract, you want the oracle to produce some kind of result, ideally in your favor, at least honest. And furthermore, we're going to have a theorem at the end that says that if you sort of have one honest respondent, that'll be good enough. So you can realistically expect at least one person to have enough of an external interest to participate anyway as a respondent. And then our attackers have the abilities of respondents. They can make malicious submissions and appeals. They can't do like 51% attacks on the theorem, at least not in the attacks we consider in the paper or the model. They may or may not be able to like corrupt the binary oracle, because the binary oracle is a black box. We don't necessarily consider it to make good decisions anyway. In theorems and in results where we need the binary oracle to make the decision, that's explicitly stated. So we don't so much think about the attacker as corrupting that, but like realistically they might. So here's the proposal. So each respondent submits an interval. And this gets to this idea of precision, like how close can you know a price? You never like really know exactly what the price of ether is anyway. Okay, this is a bunch of different markets at any given time. So each person will submit like I think it's bigger than this and smaller than this. And then all these submissions will go into a line. And you'll notice where all of the conflicts are. So every time there's a upper bound immediately to the right of a lower bound, that's a point where like people have intrinsically disagreed. And you take all those conflicts, and what you do is you ask the binary oracle whether at each point whether the true value is bigger or less than the midpoint between the upper and lower bound of the conflict. So this is where the binary oracle comes in. It's like, binary oracle, is the value bigger than this? And you ask that for a bunch of different values of this. And that's a really clear binary question, pretty objective. And then once you have all of the answers from the binary oracle, you try to like couple that together into a result, into what the price is ultimately going to be ruled to be. So here, notice a priori that it's possible the binary oracle gave me inconsistent information. So I had these 3 points of inconsistency in the top line, and maybe they did rule that the price was to the lower than the one on the left and higher than M1 or the one on the right. So at that point, the binary oracle has given me sort of trash. It's given me inconsistent information, but despite that, we'll plot on anyway, and we'll sort of determine the, ideally the binary oracle gives you good information. But even if it gives you bad information, you can plot on by taking the sort of the binary search, and you're like, okay, I'm going to start at the point of inconsistency in the middle, and I'm just going to look at what the binary oracle told me that the value is higher or lower than that. In this case, let's say the binary oracle said the value is bigger than M1, so I'm going to eliminate, not look at everything to the left of M1, and I'm only looking at stuff to the right of M1, and then I'm like, okay, well, there was another point here too, that M2, I still, even in the second line, I still have inconsistencies. So then I look, what did the binary oracle say about M2? It said that the value was less than M2. So at this point, I can eliminate everything to the right of M2, and I'm left with this sort of set of nested intervals. This no longer has any inconsistencies. And the output value is the average between the highest lower bound and the lowest upper bound. Okay, and then what we need to sort of finish the model here is a payoff structure. So each respondent that submits an interval that doesn't include the ultimate output loses a deposit. And if you submit an interval that does include the ultimate outcome, you get a payoff that looks like this. And the sort of point of this formula is if someone puts in a giant interval, someone puts in minus infinity to infinity or minus large number to plus large number, they're not wrong. So we don't penalize them. But if someone put in a much smaller interval, that person that was also ruled to be correct. They gave much more useful information, so we give them almost all, we give the person with the smaller interval almost all of the reward, and the minus infinity to infinity would get essentially 0. Okay, so now we have a bunch of basic properties about this. The rest, most of the paper is proving things about this model, desirable properties. So the first big thing that's really important, even though it's a basic property, is that there is enough lost deposits by respondents, then you can pay the binary oracle. So remember, the binary oracle charged to feed. These people weren't willing to like make these decisions for free, but like enough people lose deposits that can be paid. And moreover, note that that means that if, as like a consequence of the first point, if all of the people, the respondents, submit compatible information, well, there couldn't have been any cost to the binary oracle because you didn't have any money to pay them. But you didn't need to because all the responses were coherent, and you basically skip to the last step where you have this nested series of intervals. And then you can even nuance this more and be like, okay, what's the resources of total incorrect parties? And then you can look at like the running time in terms of that. It's logarithmic in terms of the resources of people who were wrong. It halts, whatever, it cruises a value. So you can look at attackers. So an attacker, like, they're sort of different strains of what an attacker might want to do. Like, a priori, they may want to change the outcome, and that may or may not work. But what they can certainly do is they can grief you. Where an attacker, like they may try to attack you in a way that changes the outcome and fails. But what they can definitely do is like appeal everything, like a whole bunch of times until they run out of money. And then regardless of however the binary oracle rules, however the process works, that will cause a big delay. So an attacker is capable of causing us grief by delaying us in exchange for blowing a lot of money. And this costs, like the length of the delay is logarithmic in the attacker resources, at least for Claros and over appeal structures. So that's probably acceptable. And now getting to sort of like the big point of like what properties we want this real number value oracle to have and whether this actually has them, is mostly about precision and how precise the outcome is. So notice that like how precise like a price oracle should be is like a complicated question. So already if you just like are like fixed precision, 1 cent, that can be problematic because the price of cryptocurrency can wildly fluctuate. It can 10x, it can be divided by a 10 to a 10. So like that precision may no longer be relevant. Moreover, even if you're more savvy than that, and you're like, okay, precision to like 1% of whatever the output value is, because it's on different markets at different times, you don't really know how precise you can really be. Different applications need different levels of precision. So how precise should we be? Well, this proposal is as precise as the users want it to be. Basically, the precision is determined by the submissions, by the respondents. And in particular, this sort of one honest respondent theorem says that if you have someone who submits like a really precise interval that is nonetheless ruled to be correct, like the outcome is ultimately an interval, and they pay some appeal fees, potentially if they have to, that they ultimately get back if they win, then the output will be in that interval. So you only, like all the respondents can be trash except for this one person who submits an interval as precise as he needs, and if assuming some assumptions about how, like in this case, about idealistic production of the binary oracle, because obviously if the binary oracle is producing bad results, then the real oracle will as well. But under assumptions that the binary oracle here is doing a good job, then the ultimate output will be as precise as that user needed. Now there's a secondary question about precision that's like, okay, but like with these prices, because there are different markets at different times, really a price is like, it's a bunch of discrete transactions at different exchanges, different places. It might not necessarily be aligned. I might not be I could reasonably argue that the price is 164.63, and I can also reasonably argue that the price is 164.65, and those are both sort of equally reasonable. So you might say that there's this interval ultimately where yeah, the price is not 160, it's not 180, but it's somewhere in the interval. I don't really know where it is, and because of we can analyze sort of how the payoffs work and how that fits with the incentives of the respondents. Because remember, the respondents, they get a better reward if they submit a small interval, and you can be like, am I incentivizing the respondent in such a way that they'll rush to submit really small intervals beyond what you could reasonably say even was the level of precision you can actually have? And the result is no, more or less. So we consider a model where the output value is drawn uniformly from this interval where you could plausibly be, v minus epsilon, v plus epsilon. You can have other models rather than uniform, but this uniform model already corresponds to sort of a reasonable model of how the binary oracle might work. Then you can say that there's an equilibrium where all the respondents submit responses containing the v minus epsilon, v plus epsilon. Okay, that seems good. So this we're Bayesian Nash incentive compatible. But that's actually kind of cheap as stated, because remember this is a zero-sum game between the respondents. So if all the other respondents have submitted intervals containing b minus epsilon b plus epsilon, then they're all not going to lose. So there aren't going to be any deposits to be lost. So it's not really in my interest as me as one respondent to deviate from that, because I have a risk of losing and I have no upside. But moreover, even if there's like an attacker who submits an interval like way over to the side, maybe they tried to change the result of the oracle and they failed, so now they lost a deposit, and that now it's a positive sum gain for the respondents. So I might try to like submit like a really small interval in b minus epsilon b plus epsilon to get that lost attacker's deposit, and that doesn't really work either. The result says that you're incentivized to submit the whole interval b minus epsilon b plus epsilon unless some attacker has already taken up a part of the b minus epsilon b plus epsilon interval, and then what you're incentivized to do is sort of take the other part, and so like sort of averaging out what the attacker did. Okay. So just to conclude, we have an oracle for real values that is compatible with cryptoeconomic binary oracles. So if you have start with a cryptoeconomic binary oracle, you can plug it into this and you'll get a cryptoeconomic real oracle, and it tunes. So respondents submit intervals where they think the value is, and this fits in this value, this idea that the price is kind of this thing you can't touch. It's transcendental. You can't necessarily say it exactly, so the respondents don't have to say it exactly. They only have to give an interval. Incompatibilities are dealt with a collection of calls to binary oracle and a sort of binary search. And then these sorting precision questions are largely addressed. Precision is as precise as the users need it to be, and in most circumstances, you're not incentivized to submit intervals beyond what you could reasonably say with precision to be. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions?